Hey, welcome back. This is Peter Szabo, and in this lesson, we're going to cover the human OS, also known as the human operating system. Now, this is a very important core lesson of the program, so please pay very close attention, in which we're going to cover number one, the secret weapon of billionaires and ultra successful people, also known as first principles based systems thinking. As a matter of fact, two different mental models combined, and I'm going to tell you a lot more about that. Now, the human OS, the human operating system, how it was built upon the so-called first principles based systems thinking to really demystify success and overall the entire self-help personal development industry once and for all. Once you understand this, everything's going to make sense, and you're going to understand how different modalities, different programs, different philosophies or pieces of advice really all fall into one comprehensive framework and understanding. It's going to be like seeing for the first time. I know it's a big claim, but I promise you it'll all come together. Then, how upgrading your identity is really the one thing. If you just focus on this one thing, you can almost forget everything else, because this one thing will make everything else fall into place. Now, of course, we're going to cover the rest as well, but this is really that one missing piece. If you understand this, if you do this, things will start to fall into place. And then how to get the best results possible in the least amount of time by optimizing each constituent part of the human OS. Now, before I even dive in, I think I would be remiss and I would do you a disservice if I didn't let you watch this video by Elon Musk explaining first principles thinking. So let's dive right in.
And then I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing.
Me too type ideas.
Yeah,
Slight
iterations
yeah.
on a theme, and it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world. And what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, okay, what are we sure is true or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, in fact, people do, that battery packs are really expensive, and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past. You're like, well, no, that's pretty dumb, because if you applied that reasoning to anything new, then you wouldn't be able to ever get to that new thing.
Right.
It's like you can't say, horses. Well, nobody wants a car because horses are great and we're used to them and they can eat grass and there's lots of grass all over the place, and there's no gasoline that people can buy, so people are never gonna get cars.
Right.
People did say that. And for batteries, they would say, it's going to cost. Historically, it's cost $600 per kilowatt hour, and so it's not going to be much better than that in the future. And you say, no, okay, well, what are the batteries made of? So first principles would be to say, okay, what are the material constituents of the batteries? What is the spot market value of the material constituents? So you can say, okay, it's got cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, and some polymers for separation, and a steel can. So break that down on a material basis and say, okay, what if we bought that in the London Metal Exchange, what would each of those things cost? Like, it's like $80 per kilowatt hour. So clearly, you just need to think of clever ways to take those materials and combine them into the shape of a battery cell, and you can have batteries that are much, much cheaper than anyone realizes.
So let's recap this example Elon talked about. So by analogy, if we reason using that, you could say that, hey, electric cars will never work because, batteries are expensive. It's not going to get much cheaper because that's how it's always been. And yeah, Tesla has no future. But if you look at it through the first principles thinking mindset and framework by boiling things down to their fundamental truths, You can look at it this way. Well, if we purchase the individual battery materials from cost-efficient sources, that'll allow us to make these batteries way cheaper than anyone else, and that can bring Tesla to life and bring these cars to the masses at a good enough price and margin. So this way, he could make it work, and this is how the super rich people think. So essentially, you boil things down to their fundamental thoughts and reason from there. This way, you can really start to understand how things fundamentally work, not just because someone said this piece of advice or that piece of advice. Like, you really start to understand it from the ground up. And then you pair this with systems thinking, and you'll start to understand really how the world works as if you got glasses for the first time. Now, this is a systems thinking diagram. Systems are everywhere in the world, but fundamentally they can be boiled down to these constituent parts, right? You have inputs, you have processes, you have outputs that funnels back into feedback, which becomes more input. And not a single system happens in a vacuum. All systems happen within an environment. So systems are really everywhere. If you look around us, there's galactic systems, solar systems, biological systems. Within our body, there's many subsystems, right? Your respiratory system, your psychological systems, your digestive GI system, your skeletal system. Within the civilization, there is the law system, right? The legal system, healthcare systems, governments are systems, businesses are systems, the educational systems that we talk about so much, right? Then social systems could be different groups and bands and lovers and a company and a family, different ecosystems, right? So everything in the world is really a system. Now, what is a system, right? A system is simply a collection of elements that interact with each other with a shared purpose. Now, it's very important that you become a systems thinker if you really want to take things to the next level. And somebody who's a systems thinker is someone who understands each constituent part, each element, and then their relationship between each other and how they form a whole, versus just someone who sees isolated components. So a component thinker example would be a regular dermatologist, right? A skin doctor. Say you go to them, you complain to them about acne, right? They look at you saying, okay, let's put you on some cream or some meds. Now the problem with this is he looks at the problem in a vacuum, right? He's literally just looking at the pimples, and by just looking at the pimples as one element, one issue, he immediately jumps to a diagnosis and puts you on some medication. Now, he looks at the issue as a standalone issue and never really takes the time to examine how this issue is connected to other problems, other biological systems, right? Never takes the time to examine inputs. For instance, your diet, right? Your diet has a massive impact on your health, your sleep, and for instance, your skin as well. If you ever looked into this stuff, right, it's pretty common knowledge for anyone who suffered of acne like me in the past that, for instance, dairy creates acne, right? So this type of a dermatologist, they specialized in skin disorders. They never, even took a class on diet or nutrition. So they don't even know about it. They don't even know that connection. So all they're going to tell you is, hey, let's put you on some of these meds. Maybe they'll help you out. But it's like they never really address the root cause of the problem, for instance, by looking at their diet as one example, or, the environment. Are they in a really stressful environment? That also could be contributing to acne. So they're not looking at all of these different things that impact and create the problem in the first place, right? That could be causing the symptom. And they try to attempt to treat the symptom directly on the surface level instead of addressing the root cause. And this rarely ever works. I mean, maybe it does for some acute stuff, right? If you have a broken arm, yeah, let's go get you surgery. But say you have a chronic disease, say some GI issues, Crohn's disease, acne, whatever it is, that's why you want to go to a functional medicine doctor. So that would be an example of a systems thinker, because a functional medicine doctor is someone who learned about the whole human body as a whole. So they learn about skin issues, they learn about diet, sleep, stress, hormones, you name it, and they understand how these things interact and how they work together. So them, instead of just looking at it, your issue, acne, and saying, okay, you got acne, it's a disease, let's put you on this cream, they'll really try, spend time and really try to study and observe what's going on. They'll look at your diet, they'll look at your sleeping habits, they'll look at your environment that you're in, they'll do your blood work, they'll measure your hormones, etc., etc. So long story short, they look at the human body as a whole, observes these different interactions and interconnections between different subsystems, different elements, inputs, and the environment, and really treats the root cause holistically. This is the key to healing and lasting change. So I hope this example really gave you a good example of what it is, like what the difference is between someone who's just thinking in terms of components, singular elements, versus someone who's a systems thinker. Another example would be, your average newbie who starts to run ads. And they run ads and they don't work, right? And so they think, okay, the issue must be the ads. I need to hire an agency. I need to change the ad. I need to do this and that. And they're still struggling and they're still not getting results. I'm speaking with experience because I had the great, amazing privilege to speak to a lot of people like that when they were reaching out to us for help, that they've done all this work before they worked with us and nothing worked for them. And then the biggest thing I had to kind of teach them is, look, ads are maybe 20% of the equation. 80% is everything else, like your niche, your offer, your fundamentals, just having a really good product, a really good sales process, a really good offer, really good backend so that when you scale, you can handle it, you have infrastructure, you have the right people. And, when you have those things correct, the ads almost fall into place, right? Because if you have a really irresistible offer, a really good sales process, you just plug in the ads, and if you do a decent job at ads, it'll work extremely well. Now, again, that's a difference between someone who's a beginner and doesn't quite understand business as a whole and all these details that go into it and how they interact with each other. They may just think, oh, acne or, oh, ads not running well must be an ad issue. So let's try some different ad tactics. But someone who's been in the game, like myself, for instance, for 11 years, I understand that it's a little bit deeper than that it's not just ads, but there's these different subsystems within your business. And we need to look at it holistically, just like a functional medicine doctor would. And maybe you have an ad issue, but chances are if ads are not working, in 99% of cases I've seen that there's typically a deeper problem, such as a weak offer, a bad product, bunch of other things. And when we start to fix those things, fix the copy, fix the sales process, and maybe we help them a little bit with their ads, not even too much, that alone makes a major difference. So hope these two examples really got the point across. Now, when we combine the two, the whole new world opens. I call it first principles based systems thinking. So when you combine the two and practice thinking like this, and again, it's a practice, it's something that, you'll have to initially put some conscious effort into it to look at the world like this, to imagine things as these charts and these systems, but eventually it becomes natural and you start thinking like a person like this. It's as if someone lifted a blindfold off of you and everything in life starts to make so much more sense and you start to understand how things really work at a fundamental level. It doesn't just apply to health or your business. It applies to the economy. When you really start to look at the economy, for instance, through first principles and systems thinking, you're going to understand, okay, what makes the economy work as it happens. You'll be a better investor because you know what makes people tick. Right? You apply this to the human psyche, you'll understand what makes humans do what they do, why they buy, why they don't buy, and you'll be really able to make big changes in your business simply based on basic logic and common sense. And you're not going to have to listen to a bunch of different conflicting advice. I think that's why success was always a mystery to me, because when I got started at 11 years old, which is exactly 11 years ago at the time of recording this video, I was so confused. There was so much conflicting advice. You should do this business model. No, you should do affiliate. You should do SEO. You should do high-ticket courses. And I've tried it all. And I was also getting different, pieces of advice whenever I tried a different business model. Like, no, you should do Facebook ads. No, do YouTube ads. No, you need a chatbot. And I was so confused, not to mention different self-help philosophies, right? Some people say, no, you got to work hard 24/7, never sleep. Some people say, no, just manifest it, sit back, get in a good state, just get it attract to you. All these different philosophies, approaches, I was so confused. I was being dragged to the right and left, and I was not getting anywhere, right? Success was fleeting. I would take 2 steps forward, but 3 steps back, and I was wondering, why is this happening to me? Now, a few years ago, thankfully, I learned these mental models of literally billionaires use this and ultra successful people, and I was able to reverse engineer what made me go from a broke 11-year-old kid destined to have a mediocre life to defying the odds and building a life I love. There's enormous gratitude I have for the fact that I've got so much help from different mentors, different seminars, masterminds, books I learned, etc. And finally, with all this knowledge and all this understanding of mental models, I was able to go from that broke kid to building $2 million businesses, helping 300 of my plus clients generate tens of millions of dollars collectively. And what I'm about to share with you is really the fundamental reason why I was able to do it. So again, keep paying close attention because this is the video in the course. This is the most important video in the course by far. Then I spent months thinking about the patterns that made anyone successful versus fail from me, my students, clients, competitors, mentors. And after countless iterations, this is what I developed. I call it the human operating system. Now, what is the human OS or human operating system? Well, it's a first principles based system understanding of how humans work, adapt, and evolve. Essentially, it answers the question, why some people do what they do, why some people fail versus why some people succeed, why some people can follow through and why some people have, this 2 steps forward, 3 steps back issue of inconsistency and low follow through and all of these other questions. Now, by learning the human OS diagram, you will finally, once and for all, demystify success and failure and the difference between the two. All of these different philosophies and pieces of advice and approaches will start to make sense as you'll boil them down to their fundamental truths and fit them within a system that simply makes sense. You'll know exactly what has to happen in order for you to become and have and do whatever you want. And I know this may sound a little bit cheesy, but this literally has the potential to change your life forever, but it'll be up to you to study this, practice this, and put the system into action. Knowledge is potential power, but putting it into action is real power. So, introducing the human OS. So what we've got here, as you've seen it before, there's inputs, processes, outputs, feedback, and then the environment. So how it works in a nutshell, I'll walk you through it, and then on the next slide, I'll kind of recap everything I mentioned. So first of all, we're born into an environment, right? To a set of parents, primary caregivers somewhere in the world. Now, we're born as a blank slate, all right? Not a single baby is born with pre-installed beliefs that they're good enough or not good enough or too tall or too short or whatever it may be. We start as a blank slate in an environment. Now, as we go through life, we go through different experiences. Our parents teach us different things. We unconsciously model them. We see how they do things, how they talk, how they treat money, how good are they with their finances. We go to schools. We learn a bunch of stuff there. We develop friendships. And long story short, all of these experiences act as data that feeds into our brain, into ourselves, into what I call our identity or self-image. Now, all of these experiences automatically have a meaning assigned to them, right? So whenever something happens, our brain automatically links some meaning to it. And ultimately, these experiences and meanings that eventually become memories of the past shape who you are, right? Your past ultimately has shaped who you now become. And now you have this sense of identity. Essentially, what it means is what you think of yourself deep down, like who you really think you are deep down. Now, we humans, we have this survival need of staying consistent with who we think you are. If someone's not a smoker and you offer them cigarettes, what do they say? Well, I'm not a smoker, right? And they don't have to use willpower. They don't have to lift weights to say no to cigarettes. They're simply not a smoker. It's just something they don't do, right? So when it's a part of who you are, that shapes how you act, think, and feel. This is the most important part you need to understand. Who you think you are is going to determine how you think, feel, and act most of the time. 95% of our actions, thoughts, feelings are automatic. They're unconscious, and they're being directed by our sense of identity. Sure, we have free will, which is maybe 5% of our actions. So we have a choice to go, right when typically we go left. But please understand that 95% of the actions we take is unconscious processes, and that is directed by this identity we've developed. So if you've been born into an average middle-class family and that's what you saw your whole life and that's what you learned, chances are you linked it as a part of your identity that, hey, that's just who I am. I'm a part of a middle-class average family. And that will shape the type of thoughts, actions, and feelings that you have. And ultimately, what you do in the world becomes the input of the output, becomes the cause to the effect of the results that you get in life. Right? Now, these results are going to become new data, new experiences, new memories that simply feed back into the system and confirm your identity. A prime example I always give is, say there's a kid, right? They're young. And especially as a side note, as a pro tip, especially 0 to 7 years old, we're in deeper brainwaves, right? So typically an adult is in the beta brainwave. Now, when we're super young, we tend to be in alpha or even theta when we're kind of like sponges, right? That's why a young child is going to learn 5 languages easily, whilst someone maybe 40 years old maybe struggles to learn one simple language, right? Because when we're young, we need to learn so many things in life, how life works, where we fit within it, who we are, who we're not. So especially those first 7 years, we're very impregnable, right? We shape most of our beliefs about the world and ourselves. So say this kid is 6 years old, just goes to school, takes his first math test, and they fail, right? And unfortunately, maybe the teacher says something nasty like, this kid's bad at math, or maybe he overhears it. Maybe the classmates laugh at him, and boom, a traumatic experience was born. Something that really hurt the kid. Maybe he really internalized it, repeated it. Man, maybe I'm really dumb. Maybe I'm stupid. I'm just not good at math. And if that experience is repeated and there's emotional intensity, that is being stored as a belief, and it starts to become a part of your identity. Well, I guess that's just who I am. I'm just not good at math. I'm not very smart. Now, if that kid, next time he gets a test, and that's a part of his identity, that is going to determine how he acts. Next time he gets a test, he'll be like, well, I'm not too good at math. He's not even going to try very hard. His prefrontal cortex that has to do with attention, focus, and smart thoughts is going to turn off because there's a lot of stress and fight or flight attached to the stressful memory in the first place. So long story short, the actions he's going to put in and how he's going to show up and what attitudes he's going to show up with, he's going to most likely fail the math test, right? So he's going to get an F or like a really bad grade. And guess what? This feedback now spirals back into the data and is just going to further confirm, you see, I told you I'm bad at math, right? And this sense of identity just gets reinforced and reinforced, becomes stronger and stronger until it's a complete self-fulfilling prophecy. Same thing applies. You're born middle-class family. That's who you are. You take middle-class actions, you get middle-class results, and you see, I'm just a middle-class person. Now, the problem is when you try to make more money, right? You may set the goal like, no, I want to start my business, so I'm going to grow my business, get to 100,000 a year or $1 million a year. Consciously, 5% of your actions, you may start to take a little bit of action this way, but soon enough, 95% your unconscious habits and programs are going to take over and going to start taking you in a different direction. So this is why self-sabotage happens. You may try to take steps in a certain direction. You may take 2 steps forward, but immediately, no, that's not who I am. That's outside my comfort zone. That's not my identity. And we have this need to remain consistent with who we think we are. You're going to self-sabotage yourself. This is really the fundamental reason why people self-sabotage is because their identity doesn't quite align with their goals yet, right? So they self-sabotage and it just becomes a vicious cycle. So the absolute key is if you want to get a different result, not only you have to set goals, but you also have to create a new identity, a new character, become that new version of yourself, And then almost automatically, you're going to be pulled in the direction of your goals and pulled away from your past results. That's why I wrote it here. I mean, if you just remember this one idea, this is the main thing, is that your identity equals your reality. Let me repeat that again. Your identity equals your reality. And this is, by the way, without any esoteric, spiritual, metaphysical thoughts. I mean, this is pure psychology. Now, if you're in the crowd of people who believe in the law of attraction and metaphysics, etc., and quantum physics, which I definitely am fascinated by and very interested in the field, you could also explain some of these things with those examples, right? When these synchronicities happen, and ultimately they are tied to your identity. Now, that comes down to a different program. So for the scope of this program, I'm mostly going to focus on the tangible psychological aspects of it. There may be in the future a different program where I cover the more metaphysical aspects, the quantum physics, if you're interested. But for now, all you need to understand is ultimately who you think you are deep down will very much so shape your thoughts, feelings, and actions. That shapes your results. That's just new data, new experiences, new inputs that further confirms your identity. And it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a cycle. Now, you also need to understand that all of this happens within an environment, okay? So who you are around, who you hire as your mentor, who your friends are, who your parents are, etc., also act as data into your environment. So by the fact that you invested in this program and that you're starting to hang around successful people who are where you want to be, who might have made a bunch of money in their business, that alone starts to shift and upgrade your identity, because we also have this human need of love. And we don't want to leave our tribe behind, or we don't want to let them down. So now you're starting to be a part of an environment of a tribe of high achievers, of people who have high standards, who want more from life. This will start to influence you too and start to push you and pull you in that direction. So that's a great first step. And later in this program, we're going to look at, okay, how can we look at the building blocks of your identity, right? Because really what built your identity are your past experiences, your memories and beliefs that were created from those past experiences. So we'll be looking at memory flipping as, I believe, one of the most powerful tools so that you can go back in the past, resolve past trauma, reframe it, and help you succeed and help you create empowering alternatives that, instead of hold you back or help, self-sabotage you, will now push you forward and pull you forward. So that's going to be one of the most important things. We're also going to be looking at how you can create synthetic experiences that seem real to your brain and essentially your nervous system, that will also start to upgrade your identity, thus upgrade your thoughts, feelings, and actions, thus your results. Okay, so we're going to cover each and every constituent part of the system, but this was just a basic introduction. So again, explain step by step, just so you have on one piece of paper, one piece of slide, starting with the environment. We're born into an environment, start as a blank slate, right? How many babies come with pre-installed beliefs? None. Now, next is inputs. As children, we go through life, experience life, and over time, we develop this sense of self, aka how we perceive ourselves deep down. This is our identity, or another word could be self-image, which is primarily made up of past experiences, also known as memories. Next, there are the processes. Your identity literally determines how you think, feel, and act, because every single human has this built-in unconscious need to remain consistent with who we think we are. It's a part of our survival need. Now then, the outputs. Input equals output. It's a common knowledge in the coding world. So how you think, feel, and act, obviously over time, will cause the results you get or the lack thereof. Now finally, the feedback. The results you get, the reality that you experience, will feed back into your identity, confirming and creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why I equals R. This is why your identity mirrors your reality, because nothing will ever permanently and quickly change for the better, especially without that self-sabotage I talked about, or, a lot of people need to experience that rock bottom type of pain, like do or die, until you upgrade your identity. Because when you do that, when you do upgrade your identity, everything starts to fall into place on almost autopilot, nearly effortlessly and rather quickly, right? When you upgrade your identity, you may notice that you're more drawn towards your goals. You may stop, the stupid stuff, the self-sabotage that consciously you shouldn't be doing, but you're still unconsciously kind of following through on those habits. You may notice that naturally you start to do the right things, that, for instance, you're more drawn to eating healthy. You're more drawn to just sit at your computer and put some good quality work in. You're more drawn to focus instead of being distracted, right? You're less interested in checking social media or YouTube, constantly and distracting yourself. You may notice an increase in discipline, drive, even luck, grace, and these quantum synchronicities, right? Again, that kind of aspect of the course is not within the scope of this course, maybe in another one, but it definitely is a part of it as well, right? That's what Tony Robbins, for instance, calls grace, that element of luck, that element, like sometimes it's hard to explain, that I've had many experiences in my life where I couldn't see, quote unquote, the light at the end of the tunnel, and something crazy happens and I just make it happen. And it's because I was upgrading my identity and I was committed to my goals no matter what. So again, quick recap, you can even take a screenshot of it. We'll put it in the PDF line up to the right so that you can download it, you can print it out, you can, post it on your wall if you wish. But essentially, this is how it works in a nutshell. So again, the fundamental idea is that your identity equals your reality. You've probably seen this chart before. It's the pattern of existence diagram where, we discussed your set points, that we all have these averages, these maximums and minimums for different areas of our lives, how much we can earn, how much money is in our bank accounts, how clean your apartment is, how good your mood is on the average. And we all fluctuate around the set point. Now, here's the big secret. Your set point is determined by your identity. Your identity determines your minimum and maximum standards, right? If you have an identity of someone who's a six-figure earner, then you're going to hold yourself to that. You're going to do whatever it takes to maintain that reality, right? You may start to make a little bit more. You may start to get to that seven-figure level. And then typically that's what I see with six-figure earners is they start to sabotage. They relax a little bit. They step down, they step back from the pedal, and then they go right down. Now, if they ever run into a rut, say they are about to make 80,000 this year, but they're a six-figure earner, they kick in a gear, something happens, they show up at the right place, right time, whatever it takes, they get back to their minimum standard of six figures. Now, the key is, if you want to go from 6 to 7, you have to design a new version of yourself and become that version of yourself who is a seven-figure earner. You're going to have to become someone who thinks, acts, and feels like a seven-figure person. And when you do that, your actions are going to change, your attitude's going to change, your follow-through is going to change, and everything will start to fall into place for you to increase your financial thermostat, for you to start getting to the next level. Now, my question to you is, does this make common sense to you, right? Can you see this applying to your life? Like, would you agree that this is how it worked for you too, that you were born, you went through life, some things happened, positive and negative, and they shaped who you are today. And now that sense of identity just keeps perpetuating the same results, roughly taking the same actions, same thoughts, same ideas. I mean, most people, they feel the same, 5, 6, maybe 10 emotions on a reoccurring basis. Most people do the same exact things on a reoccurring basis. So we all have this happening within us. Now, my question to you is, does this make sense to you? Now, this is such a key idea. Again, I'll quote Tony Robbins. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves, okay? If you upgrade your identity, that is the one thing that'll make everything else fall into place. I think I touched on this already, but again, a quick recap. When you start adding in new synthetic experiences that start upgrading your identity, when you start flipping past memories that also start to do it, when you put yourself in a better environment, better peer group, people that hold you to a higher standard, you change these three things. Most importantly, this identity part, these two will start to change too, guaranteed. Look, there's no luck behind it, nor is it rocket science. It's simple logic based on first principles, system-based thinking. Once you really understand it, all of these different self-help ideas, whether it's on the esoteric side, whether it's based in pure psychology, it'll start to make sense that all of it works on this framework. It all kind of fits within it perfectly, and it'll start to make sense. It doesn't matter what modality you use, right? Whether it's memory flipping or whatever else, it all fits within this process, and this is how you get to the next level. Now, it's all about stacking the identity rocks in your favor. Like I mentioned over here, when you start using visualization, affirmations, meditation, incantation, these are good because you're adding little rocks on the scale, right, of becoming that person, right? Say your affirmations, I'm good enough, right? However, the issue here is if you have a bunch of memories proving your affirmations wrong, right? You may say these things, but if you have a bunch of traumatic memories, emotionally charged, that act as evidence, like, no, these things happen, and they clearly say the meaning I gave them is I'm not good enough. This is why affirmations and visualization, meditation doesn't work for most people, because they do, they have the best intentions, they do the right work, and these things are helpful. But again, if you have all this, negative feedback disproving it, it's not gonna flip over, right? It's not gonna be enough. This is why we flip memories, because this is important. This is one half of the equation. This is the programming, but just as important, I dare to say even more important, is the reprogramming. When you revisit the past that has shaped who you are today, and you really revisit it, you reframe it, you turn the memories around, you shift your identity like that. And then imagine you take these memories when you decided that I'm not good enough, you flip them into I was good enough, and I am good enough, and I'll be good enough no matter what, because it's my birthright to be loved. And then you combine it with this type of work. That's how you create exponential results. That's how people change their life in a month or even less. This is the biggest key. When I look back at my life, I've tried a lot of things. If I try to list it here, it would probably take an hour, because I tried a lot of stuff. I've invested $300,000 plus in books, seminars, mentors, masterminds, you name it. I've tried a bunch of things over the last 11 years. And every single time when I had big breakthroughs, I mean like next month, in a month and a half, business quadrupled, or my life completely changed, or my outlook completely changed, or got rid of anxiety, whatever big shift happened, every single time it had to do by going back to my past, finding some form of traumatic memory and addressing it, healing it. I promise you, doing that will have the biggest impact in your life. And you combine it with this type of work, you'll create amazing quantum-like growth. It's just beautiful to see. So quick recap. First principles-based systems thinking lets you understand how things work at a fundamental level, so you can reason from there versus reason by analogy, which is often flawed. The human OS, the human operating system, lets you understand how humans work, specifically how a sense of identity is formed over time, and it virtually determines the person's pattern of existence, right? Their standards, minimum, maximum set points, and ultimately your identity equals your reality. So then you go ahead upgrading your identity primarily via memory flipping and some of the other techniques that we cover, which is by far the best, fastest, easiest way to upgrade the results in your life by far, right? This is literally the 80-20 of the 80-20 principle, aka the one thing. Again, if you forget everything else and just do this one thing and just understand that, look, ultimately your identity shapes your reality, and you just focus on designing a new version of yourself and becoming that person, that's the one thing that'll literally make everything else easier or even unnecessary. You do that, literally the strategies fall into place. You do that, you'll do whatever it takes to get the results. So just focus on that, and I promise you, it'll completely change the rest of your life. Now, to get the best results possible, you're going to want to optimize every element of the human OS system. We covered the inputs, processes, outputs, feedback, and environment. In the Source Hacker System 2.0, we're going to cover all of that in great detail, how you can optimize each and every constituent part. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, good news, there's actually a lot more like where this came from. This video was actually taken from within the Source Hacker System. This is kind of like my premium program that has dozens and dozens of videos more like this across 6 weeks, essentially teaching people how to get rid of the bad stuff from their lives, the self-destructive patterns, self-sabotage, bad habits, addictions, and how to create a life they love by really getting their life together, achieving their goals, and maxing out their health, wealth, love, and happiness. It's the best stuff I got from over the last 11 years and having invested over 300,000 in different mentors, masterminds, you name it. So hey, if you're interested, just click the link below or the link on the video to check it out. Bye-bye.